Hello and welcome back to Dueling Grounds. So we've been talking about doing deck techs for a while, never got around to it. But last weekend, me, Vlad, Tim, and Yoza went to Relic Fest, which is a big Duel Commander tournament for those of you who aren't aware. It was a ton of fun, and we thought that now that we're back, we're going to do a series where we do a deck tech on each of the decks we took and talk a bit more about why we took those decks and how we're feeling about the decks now. So Vlad, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Very happy to be here and also to share my thoughts on what I would like to think is quite an original deck that I've taken to, not the score I would have wanted, but I think a respectable performance, at the end of the day too of the Relic.
So who are you playing? What was your commander?
So I was playing Norman Osborn. And this is really, I generally really like Grixis. So, as you know, I was one of the very first people to pilot Kefka deck in our league. And when I was playing Kefka, I was always thinking about around this nice synergy of having a commander that lets you discard the card on its own, and then running it in some kind of reanimator shell. So I've actually built this deck with Kefka first in mind, but then I realized that Kefka was unnecessarily slow and I didn't really need to wait until turn 5 until I could discard a card. And that's why I've tested Norman, and actually Norman vastly outperformed Kefka in this type of deck. But those two decks are actually very different, by its nature. One being quite heavy reanimator with an ability to play mid-range game versus Kefka, a true mid-range deck that could play a control game.
And going into the tournament, were you happy with the decision to play Norman over Kefka?
Okay, so hindsight is always, a thing. So, when we've tested the deck tested extremely well. A week before, I went to 4-0 finish with a version of this, which I think was inferior to the version that I ended up running in the tournament in our league. So I was very happy about this. It tested excellently against the likes of Aragorn, against Yoshimaru. It had, a very positive matchup. When we've tested against the Philia, it felt like 50-50, which is probably a good place to be against Philia. So I think that, I was happy with the deck. Obviously, it performed much better on day 2. So I should mention, day 1, I went 6-4. So I went, 1 loss below the cut. But I did feel I was quite unlucky in some of the games. And in day 2, I ran the deck to 5-1-1 finish when, one of the draws, I did manage to get my opponent down to 1 life in turn 5 and they had no way how to win the game. So it would have been a win if I had a little bit more time. So I think the deck performs really well for people who like to play reanimator strategies, but also be in control of the game. I think this is one of the best decks you can play.
So looking through the deck list a little bit more, talk us through the general game plan.
Yes. So the general game plan is so you have 2 game plans, really. So the first game plan is to reanimate a strong creature as soon as possible, right? And this is a typical reanimation strategy. Where this deck differs to maybe, if we would compare it to likes of Terra, which is a pure reanimator deck, is that this deck plays a lot of disruption. So you can actually play a disruption game. So you're not reliant on a reanimation plan only. So you can really play a typical counter removal strategy. And actually, I've won many games without actually casting Norman at all. So I did win quite a lot of games without not even touching the commander, right? And we did build the deck in a way that it could win in such a manner. And those are generally the 2 game plans. And you always need to choose based on what draw you have, based on what deck you're playing against. Are you playing against, aggro, control? Do you feel they have graveyard hate? Virtually, generally speaking, you're not rushed to a 1 line of play and then lose if the opponent just has a perfect answer. And also you don't necessarily just lose when they play, some kind of graveyard hate turn 1, like the Soul Cauldron or, what's the name of the artifact?
Ghost Vacuum.
Yeah, Ghost Vacuum, right? So that did happen as well. And I did win easily by playing actually a control game. And I'll speak a little bit because this kind of mindset has influenced significantly some of the card selection in the deck itself.
Okay, so let's actually go and look through the deck.
So let's start talking about the commander a little bit, right? So Norman Osborn. So first thing to say is that how many rounds I've played? 17 rounds? Yes, 17 rounds. In 17 rounds, and most of my games, I either lost 1-2 or I won 2-1, very seldomly 2-0. I did win some 2-0s, never lost 0-2. But in all of those games, I never flipped by commander. Okay, so that's thing to consider. So you always want opponents to read it and, they get confused what it does. I never flipped it.
It's irrelevant text, basically.
It's almost irrelevant. Once in testing, there was a situation where it actually made sense to flip it. Usually that situation is that you attack with the Norman, you discard something like Toxic Deluge into the graveyard, then you untap, then you transform it for 4, and then the Deluge costs 1, and obviously because you get a counters on your commander, it can survive the Deluge, so there could be some fringe uses to flip him, but you don't flip him. It is really 2 mana, supercharged looter. That gets bigger, and I did win. I played against Philia, for example, and I did manage to get my Osborn to 7 counters, right? So it was really back and forth. So you can get the Norman really up there, and then it's a 6/6, 7/7, attacker that can't be blocked. So it is a powerhouse, and obviously the key plan here is to discard a reanimation target and reanimate. But most of the time you actually don't do it because it's or no, maybe I wouldn't say most of the time you don't do it. You don't have to do it. You can just sift through your lands and really draw, let's say, a counter spells or removal spells. So that commander is about, and it's kind of a check as well for opponents. It's similar to Yoshimaru, right? Yoshimaru strategies also they play Yoshimaru and you can just win if your opponent doesn't have a removal. But if they have a removal, you just play a different game plan. You just play, the kind of, the aggro, red-white plan. Here it's exactly the same. They either remove your commander and you're like, fine, okay, I'm going to play a different plan. I play my control, kind of mid-range plan. But if they don't answer Norman and you do have a big creature and reanimation, most likely they've lost.
Ignoring the reanimator sub theme, Norman, I guess, reads a little bit like Malcolm. It's 2 mana evasion, Malcolm's got flying, Norman can't be blocked, and then on damage, you draw a card, discard a card. So again, I can see what you mean when you say leaning into that kind of control-y, sculpting your hand. You don't necessarily need to be going for animation targets, but it's just really efficient being able to sculpt your hand every turn.
Exactly. It's superbly efficient. Obviously, it's a 1/1. So it's as fragile as a creature gets, right? And there were decks where I played it and it was just killed over and over and over. And I did lose on day 1 against like a blue-red token deck, deal 1 damage deck, and because they just could remove my Norman, consistently, and I just didn't draw a good enough, cards to actually play a different plan. So yes, that also happens, right? So it is very fragile, but also very powerful. So I kind of like that combination.
I think that's Gerson Starn Kellamorph was the token commander you're referring to.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I played against 2 of those decks. Once I lost, once I won. So but I kind of feel I should be winning, against this type of deck.
Before we go further into the deck list, actually, how are you about good matchups, bad matchups? Do you feel like there are any decks that are like auto losses or auto wins?
Yeah, I really didn't like my, the matchups against Jund strategies, because I always felt to be like on the receiving end of a good, Jund draw, like, Thoughtseize, removal, squee, and then some big creature that just kills me. Also, what I hate, I always seem to be playing against, 3/3 for 2 that removes cards from your graveyard. If you Keen Eye Curator, right? Keen Eye Curator. It felt like they always had it, my Jund opponents, and those are very miserable game plans because you can play and you can win against Graveyard Hate, but when that Graveyard Hate is 7/7 trample, it gets much more difficult, winning against that and I just didn't draw any of the relevant removal. Also sometimes it felt like I played against Junt and you play Duress and you take their card and then they draw and they just play Skull Climb off the top and then you just, I didn't like that matchup actually much. And it felt like that's one of the worst matchups, 40-60. I have played against Yoshimaru a few times. I really like the Yoshimaru matchup. I just think that most of the time, the opponents, if they don't know the deck, they will make a mistake somewhere. They will not kill a commander, or they will just, extend their board and they will just lose because of it. When we've tested against Tim, when he got to know the deck, it became, much more closer, but it still was a good matchup. I played against few combo decks, and that's one of the things that, for me, at least in the tournament, what I realized, I haven't played that much Duel Commander. I've played quite a lot of Constructed, in the past, but I realized that I just didn't know all the combos and all the decks, and I had to figure out the combos on the go. So I guess if I had known all the combos exactly, I would have known exactly how to play, but then it was a little bit of tricky situation. So I didn't quite like the combo decks matchups, but I imagine the more you get to know, the better it is. I have played, what else? I played a few games against other reanimator strategies, and I think this deck just beats them, right? Because you control the game, you can counter their stuff, they can't counter yours most of the time. You can remove their stuff, they can't remove yours. I won against Terra when they have milled their World Gorger Dragon, and I just got to steal it with my Necromancy. So I generated unlimited mana, played all of my creatures, put Deadpool in a play as my last creature, and then still had a counterspell in my hand, for whatever they wanted to play, but they just scooped. I played against Emmet Sesh, which is a similar deck to Norman. Obviously, it's a blue-black, but it kind of plays a similar shell. But again, I felt that my red removal was superior, in that matchup, and also, ability to play Deadpool. And we'll talk a little bit about Deadpool. And Deadpool is a true powerhouse. And that Deadpool, and I would say the I always forget the name. I should know the game name.
Chaos Defiler.
Chaos Defiler,
yeah.
Chaos Defiler. Those are such broken cards that they almost warrant inclusion of red. Albeit I can see very fine-tuned Emmet Sedge deck as being really good. I played against, what did I play? I played against a variety of decks. I think I haven't played outside of the Junt matchups. I didn't play a single type of deck more than twice, in 17 rounds, which was really good. So I think generally speaking, I still would like to think that this deck has positive matchup against most of the field.
Okay, I think what you said, just the last thing you said, I felt the same. I felt like I played against a really diverse metagame, which I think is a really positive takeaway, because you look at formats like Standard, and it kind of feels like there's like 1 to 3 decks that are good, and then a couple of fringe decks. But I mean, looking at this tournament and my matchups, and then looking at the top 8, there's only 1 repeat in the top 8. That's a really healthy metagame. Yes. Your story about the World Gorger Necromancy was just like the funniest thing I heard all weekend. I think you said that when they milled the World Gorger, you called a judge over to explain how the combo worked, and you untapped and you did the combo. Brilliant.
Yes, I did, because I did actually cast Duress on them before, and I discarded something which was a Necromancy. So I knew they had Necromancy in hand, but I also had a Necromancy. So I called the judge because I don't play the combo and I didn't want to mess it up, right? So I said, oh, I know they have Necromancy in hand. How would it work if they actually got Dragon and they, just went through it? So they can generate unlimited mana, and then all the permanents flash in, flash back. You need to have a different Okay, so I now get it. Okay, so I'll cast my Necromancy.
After that experience, have you considered running World Gorger in this deck, or do you not feel like there's space for it?
I don't think there is a space. I don't think it's necessary, and I think that we'll talk about my selection of creatures, right? And for me, it was like the creature needs to be able to win you game on its own, right? And in this deck, the dragon doesn't win on its own, right? It just doesn't, right? You need to have some kind of card that will go with it, so that you would win if you actually cast the combo. So for me, generate unlimited mana, like it's not. It's not a game winning situation in every time. Yeah.
It's better in decks where normally the commander, for example, like with Croaxer, you can keep casting Croaxer from the command zone of your infinite mana, and that'll kill your opponent. So that decks that have a payoff for the infinite mana in the command zone is really where you want to be putting your World Watcher.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't be playing it. I like when my opponents played it. I did steal Archon from my MTGO player, right, when they milled their Archon. So thank you very much. I would really, really appreciate having an Archon, considering they had their commander, right, because they just went something. They countered back, they tapped out. I play my Archon, right, and I play my Necromancy, take their Archon. Thank you very much. Game over. So actually, I was thinking about running some Graveyard Hate, but actually you don't need to run a Graveyard Hate when you run a Reanimation, because that's the best hate you can have, right? It's almost like you utilize, you almost like weaponize their own game plan against them. Yeah, let's go through the deck list, but let's go through, some of the choices. And I have to say, in this deck list, as it usually gets, when you kind of play competitive Duel Commander, every card matters, right? And every card kind of, sometimes people might feel 100 cards, so you have a bit more leeway than in 60 card formats. And actually you don't, because you don't run multiples, right? So every card needs to have its own space and needs to kind of play some role. So every card matters here, right? This is more for people who might not have played as much Duel Commander before. Just to explain it. So the creatures really, the creatures kind of split into three, I would say three,
roles?
Groups. Yeah, three groups, three roles. Yeah. Either it's a reanimation target, or it's a utility creature that's usually powerful on its own, or it actually is a kind of, combination of both, right? So, or kind of, that can be both reanimation as well as utility. So if you go through the creatures, right? So Archon of Cruelty, I don't think requires any explanation. The best thing about Archon, not only is that it's most of the time second best reanimation target. I'll talk about the first best just in a second, but it's also persistible, right? And we spent some time thinking about, like, we wanted to have more creatures that were persistible, and that's superbly important for Archon. Before
you move on, so I shouldn't say, one of the powerful things about like Archon is that it has that ETB effect. It's relevant the turn you reanimate it. So if your opponent manages to remove it, you're still making some impacts from the game state, and you're still moving the game forward in your game plan.
Yes. And as you'll see, all of my reanimation targets have that. So, so we have put a lot of emphasis on actually getting some effect of the creature, when it comes into play or at the end of your turn, or, so most of my reanimation targets will have an ETB effect or something similar to it. The next one, which was one of the more recent additions, is Arden the Usurper from the Final Fantasy set. And this is a funny one. This is a really interesting one, because I actually won with Arden against Terra. One of the games I won with the Dragon. Another I won with Arden, or virtually I played Arden and I stole their stuff, right? And it's not only you don't steal it, you actually exile it, right?
Yeah, so they turn around, yeah.
You exile a creature, you get a 5/5 demon copy of that creature, so you get all the ETBs, and on top of it, that creature gets Menace, Lifelink, and Haste. The most powerful thing you can do with Arden is to either, exile yours or your opponent's Fury, because what it does, it comes into play, deals 4 damage with Lifelink, and then it attacks. Then it attacks with Haste as 5/5 Menace, double strike, and lifelink.
Okay.
So you get 14 life, almost either way. Now you most likely win if you kind of get to that game stage, but you can remove lots of other creatures, and there's lots of great ETB effects. And just the fact, the lifelink is super important, and that's really, it's the lifelink and haste that kind of made me run this card. If it didn't have it, I would not be running it, because most of the time you are behind. And that's when that's really critical. And again, it's less relevant against, maybe Reanimator or Control, but then exiling their own stuff from their graveyard is actually super, super helpful. So Arden has earned its keep, and I would definitely be playing the card, going forward. I think it's super strong. The next one is Barrogoyf. So Barrogoyf, I think, again, very popular creature. Almost any black-based deck will run Barrogoyf in this format. And in this type of deck, it's even better than normal. There are a couple of reasons why it's better, in this deck than anywhere else. So first of all, it does mill your cards. So that's great. Actually, that has a huge benefit in this deck. You can mill your big stuff, big guys, etc. It has lifelink. Again, lifelink is superbly important, and gaining life, is essential. And also this deck also benefits from Delirium. So there are some cards that require Delirium. So milling the cards and fueling your Delirium strategies is superbly useful. So, and then of course, returning creature, like you can return, I've returned like a Psychic Frog or Snapcaster Mage, and it just wins the game on its own. Like Barrogoyf is excellent. The next one is the MDFC card, which is the Bogart Troller. So outside of here in this deck, additional benefit of these cards is that if you discard them to Norman, you get a counter for Connive.
Yes, that's true.
And that's actually one of the reasons why I even run Bogart. I also expected some kind of, the graveyards based strategy. So it's hosting those strategies. And also you'll see later on that I play Recurring Nightmare. So actually for Recurring Nightmare, I also wanted to have some creatures, good, I wanted to have 20 plus creatures in a deck. So it actually fits all the kind of, all the requirements in this deck. And also I do run only 34 lands because this deck doesn't need to get to 4 lands. It needs to get to 3. If it gets to 4, it's good, but it doesn't need to. So kind of, having more MDFCs kind of makes sense. So
would you say the majority of times you see this card, are you playing it as a land, or are you playing it as a creature, or are you discarding it to Norman? What's the most frequent line of play?
There isn't one. I think it's
sure, it's versatility.
Yes, yeah. It is hurts. It's like, if you but discarding into Norman is great because you usually discard it if you're land flooded, obviously, right? But when you're land flooded, one of the downside is that your Norman stays 1/1, so it really stays vulnerable all the time. So actually getting that counter is superbly important. So that's when it kind of feels good to discard, the Troller or sink into Stupor. The next one is Chaos Defiler. So again, this is an excellent creature. You can cast it very easily. You can reanimate it. I would say I was 50-50 on hard casting versus reanimating the Defiler. Again, having the leave the battlefield or on die trigger is even more so, amazing. Again, I did mention the Recurring Nightmare. I didn't get to a place where I could recur Nightmare, a Chaos Defiler, because that usually kind of, leads to a scoop from an opponent, where you get to do that. But Chaos Defiler, obviously, in 1 versus 1 format is absolutely broken. Yeah.
I think you said that it did come up in a couple of your games that it is a demon as well. So
yes.
With Arden, even if you're not reanimating the Chaos Defiler, if you just cast it from hand, it still gets the Menace, Lifelink, and Trample. Lifelink, Menace, and Haste even.
Exactly. And I actually had one situation where I've played it and I've killed my opponent because I've reanimated one of his stuff with Arden. I've played a Chaos Defiler, killed his stuff, and then I just won in that attack phase. Yeah. So it did come up, once. Okay, the next one, Deadpool trading card. Absolutely amazing card, as most people playing with Deadpool would say, and absolutely frustrating and the worst card in the world for those who are, kind of facing the Deadpool from their opponents. So Deadpool, it's just bonkers, right? We all know this. Again, it doesn't target. Right, same as with Chaos Defiler. My best story was that I was playing against a blue green Nadu combo deck, and he played the Nemesis. What's the name of Nemesis?
Screaming Nemesis.
Screaming Nemesis against me. I was just like, yes, please. I would love to have 5/3 Nemesis. And you
true Nemesis. Yeah.
Nemesis. Yes, please. I would like to have it when I've played my Deadpool, and you can keep, keep the Deadpool copy. And suffice to say, I did win that game relatively easily. But Deadpool's generally amazing, like against anything. And also, it's 4 mana, so you can really cast it, from hand. So it's absolutely amazing, and no way I would ever be cutting the card.
And also, it's 4 mana you cast it from hand. If it dies, it's a card you don't mind using an animate dead on in the right situation, because sometimes just getting rid of a creature is worth it.
Yes, exactly. And there are very few 4-drops that you would not, sometimes when you need to reanimate 4-drop, it feels like a desperate play, right? You need something to block. With Deadpool, it's not. Deadpool, it feels like it could be a legit strategy to reanimate Deadpool rather than something, that could be on a paper a bit more bigger or powerful. Okay,
And
right.
that 3 damage and upkeep adds up from Deadpool.
Well, yeah, absolutely. 3 damage, it's just crazy. It's really good. The next one is Emperor of Bones. I think this is no surprise to anyone. Again, any black deck will play the Emperor of Bones. I don't think I need to really speak too much about this. Most of the time, what I like the most, if I get to it, is to remove the Metamorphosis Fanatic with the Emperor of Bones, because that's the most powerful ETB, and actually I don't exile my reanimation spell that I could potentially reanimate later in the game. And it did come up a few times that I would reanimate the Fanatic. So yeah, the Emperor of Bones, it's always good and always a great card. The next one is Fear of Missing Out. So this was the card I was deliberating whether I should cut or not. The reasons why I was deliberating whether to cut it is that it is a 2-drop. And generally, like, because you play 2-drop Commander, your 2-drops feels a little bit redundant. But I decided to keep it for a couple of reasons. The first one was that it does the kind of rummage as ETB, right? So you're not dependent on connecting in your attack phase. So it's kind of, so you don't mind the removal. Also, the second reason why I've decided to play it is that it is an enchantment. And as I said, you'll see I have few cards that care about Delirium. So, enchantment kind of made sense. And also the effect on when you actually get the Delirium, it might seem like a redundant effect to attack with a big creature twice, but even if you use it on my commander, when I just need to, go through the cards quickly or build the counters, it does happen quite a lot and it feels relevant. So I did keep the Fear, and I would keep playing the Fear as well, The next one is Fury. Again, I think requires no explanation why you would play Fury. You can even reanimate it in this deck, which can be really amazing. I've already shared some of the stories with Fury, and it's the best one to, exile to Arden, as I've already mentioned. The next on the list is, I would say an OG reanimation creature, Gristlebrand. And this is actually the creature we discussed the most about cutting. And that is the Gristlebrand, I think it's been a little bit power crept. And the reason is, I said very early on that, when we've included, the reanimation targets, really the focus was that they do something when you play them. And where technically Gristlebrand does allow you to draw 7 cards, it does cost 7 life, so it's not for free. So, and you need to connect an attack step to get a lifelink. Again, for example, for something like Emperor of Bones, the Gristlebrand is one of the best creatures to remove, that's for sure. But generally speaking, I'm not sure about Gristlebrand, and if I would keep playing it. One of the cards I did cut from going day 1 to day 2 was Anger, right? Some people might be thinking, why not play Anger? And the reason was that I didn't really need haste, and some of my creatures already provided haste. So without Anger, actually, that makes even less sense to play Gristlebrand. So I don't know if I will keep playing it. For now, it's there because it still is very powerful reanimation, but it's one of the weakest ones.
I do think it is sad that's the state of Magic at the moment. When in my head, when I think of Reanimator, Gristlebrand is the creature I think of. Yet now we're looking at a Reanimator deck and we're thinking, is Gristlebrand even worth it? Difficult decisions have to be made.
Yes. Actually, maybe I should mention now that, what I would replace it with would be Hoarding Broodlord.
Okay.
Right. And I didn't play the Broodlord in the tournament because Tim has forgotten his at home, and so I didn't have it. So I had to play the Gristlebrand, but I would definitely play the Hoarding Broodlord, like ETB, do a Demonic Tutor, and then, be able to cast that spell, with Convoke. It's even exiled. because so it can be discarded. Like, Broodlord, I think is just so much stronger than the Crystal Brand. Especially as my take into this is that when I reanimate, I always assume that I will be behind, right? I'll be behind against aggro, or I'll be playing against a combo, and again against combo, I might want to get like a counter spell to stop them, or something, etc. So Gristle Brand is not good enough most of the time, unfortunately.
Worth adding, when you talk about adding a Hoarding Broodlord, you're not running like the full Tendrils combo for Broodlord, is it? You're just playing it as like almost like a fair Hoarding Broodlord, just to get either one card. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And you could get like a counter spell or removal spell, or whatever you need, or you could get another reanimation spell, right? If they answer your creature. Okay, next one on the list is again, kind of OG reanimation, Jin Gitaxias. The reason why I've included Jin Gitaxias, and again, this was my inclusion for day 2, and I have taken out Demonic Council, which I've had before, which is a kind of tutor that searches for demon, or with Delirium, it's actually demonic, was that I felt I needed more reanimation spells. So I really felt in day 1 that I was more often than not short on really good creatures to reanimate than anything else. And Jin Gitaxias is very powerful. If the only downside is if your opponent have instant speed removal for it, right? Because even if they remove it as a sorcery speed and they don't discard their whole kind of to 0, I still have drawn 7 cards, at the end of my draw step. And in this deck, drawing 7 cards usually means a win. I did win with Jin Gitaxias against Hidemashi, the blue-black control deck, where I just reanimated Jin Gitaxias turn 2, and and I was just like draw 7, keep subtlety, force of negation, lots of control stuff, and opponent didn't have a chance, and they also didn't have a removal, but even if they had, that would be it. So Jin Gitaxias, it's okay, it's good, and the second reason why I like it is that it's blue, so it's pitchable to subtlety, well as to force of negation, which is a thing, which is a very relevant element. Yeah.
I do think it's interesting talking about Crystal Brand and Jin Gitaxias next to each other, because they're kind of similar in a way. Both of them are cards that you reanimate and you will draw 7 cards somehow. Crystal Brand has almost like a guarantee you will get the 7 cards, but it'll cost you 7 life. Jin Gitaxias, you will draw the 7 cards, but there's like a removal check moment where if your opponent has instant speed removal, you don't get to draw the 7 cards. So saying that you think you're going to cut Crystal Brand or keep Jin Gitaxias, it shows that the 7 life means so much that you're willing to risk the chance of interaction.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like if you look into like Spider-Man 2099 decks, Philias decks, the Yoshimaru decks, they are very, very fast decks. I always assume I will be. I did talk about Lifelink and how I really rate it, and this is exactly the reason why, that the life matters. Right, the life really, really matters in this format, and any kind of accidental life gain or even accidental life loss matters, right? So yeah. So this is exactly the reason why. Yeah.
So yeah, next card in the deck,
the Metamorphosis Fanatic. I had to learn to play with miracles again. I did only draw it once in the whole tournament. I mean, in my first hand. Right, because otherwise you sift through your deck a lot. But to draw it as a first card, I've only done it once naturally and once with Brainstorm. But that one game when I've done it, I just played it as turn 2 for 4 lifelink, and that was against the Flash deck, and that was super irrelevant because they couldn't kill it because they could deal 3 damage, and the lifelink was so important because I could play completely different game plan than I would have needed to play if I had to really care about my life total. So
it has to be a lot more defensive.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And again, it's a little bit bonkers with stuff like Recurring Nightmare. It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah.
It's just a broken card.
It is. It kind of is. It's not broken card. It's very strong card.
Okay, fair.
Very, very strong card.
Good distinction.
I think like something like Deathpool would be broken card, This is a very strong card. It doesn't really win you game on its own, or it doesn't kind of interact with your opponent at all, because again, only takes a creature from your graveyard. If it's taken a creature from any graveyard, then I would say it's absolutely broken. But if it's I think it's fine. It's okay. Orcish Bowmasters, again, no explanation needed. And again, slight benefit here in this deck is that, because of Recurring Nightmare, the extra token could be really nice, but who would not play Bowmasters in a black base deck, right?
This is just a utility creature, as you said earlier. There's like, you got the reanimation tag. This is just pure utility.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pure utility. Yeah. The Overlord of the Belmork, which is the next one. Again, it's a really nice play. It kind of, enables you to play something really, quickly, fast. Turn 2, you just mill most of the time. I have 21 creatures, so I have just about, pretty good chance that I'll mill, at least one creature. Even if I mill something I want to reanimate, I might still keep it in my hand because I do play lots of loot effects. So it usually kind of is a benefit. And also, this card has somewhat unusual templating, right? Because most of these cards, they usually only enable you to return the cards from those you mill, but actually Overlord enables you to return any card. So if they killed one of my good cards like Psychic Frog or Bowmasters, I can just maybe mill my reanimation and return one of those great creatures. So actually it's been superb for me.
Did you ever hardcast it? I'm assuming you didn't.
Yeah, no, I did.
You did? Okay, fair.
You do it. Yeah, I think once or twice, but you do get to hardcast it. Most of the time you don't, but sometimes you do.
Yeah, 5 isn't actually that much. So I can see situations that happens.
I've never reanimated it, so there you
go. It doesn't seem like. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can reanimate it, but it's not really the kind of target you really want to reanimate.
No, it's not. And also, it did come up that this being enchantment creature, opponents got to remove it with like enchantment removal. I think it happens once or twice when it actually came into play, after 5 turns. So anyway, you play it for the initial ETB and that's about it.
Yes.
Everything on top is a benefit. Okay, next one.
Best card in your deck.
Best card in the deck, obviously, Psychic Frog. It just does everything. Everything. In this deck, it's even more bonkers than in traditional blue-black, right? Because it then lets you discard and win. It's like, I don't think I lost the game when I played a Frog turn 2. Let's call it that way. And when I was playing for 5-1-1, for the last round for top 16 in the second tournament, I did play Psychic Frog, and I was playing against red black. I don't know what's the name of the transformer. Really crazy card, kind of. But anyway, it was red black, and I got the frog. He forced me to discard 4 cards to it, tap out, and then he finally on his turn he untapped and he went, "Oh, fatal push," and I was just like, and I have the misstep, and you could see that the realization that the game was really lost on my opponent's face. Anyway, Psychic Frog was amazing. Okay, so
you don't really say much more about Psychic Frog. It's consistently seeing playing several formats. It's just a good card.
It's I think this is a broken card. This is a broken card. Actually, yeah, I think I would put it up there. Not the bannable card. It doesn't do enough to justify any type of ban discussion, but it is kind of broken. Yeah, it's kind of 9 out of 10, I would say. Pyrogoyf, obviously, why wouldn't you play Pyrogoyf in this type of decks? Great to reanimate, great to cast. It's a similar kind of similar to Deadpool. It's not as good as Deadpool, but it can kind of go face, which can sometimes be relevant. Again, and especially in deck that feels the graveyard, you kind of, you always want to play this. The same goes for the Snapcaster, doesn't require much explanation. Again, Snapcaster, even better in this type of deck that loots a lot, right? Yeah. The Subtlety, again, next no-brainer. You would always play Subtlety. This deck really, this Norman deck is very fast, so you really want to protect your combo. So playing any cards that can protect the combo, where the combo is loot and reanimate, I would always play. Yeah. And sometimes, what I've done as well, and it came up, I removed Subtlety with Emperor of Bones, and you can just keep the 2 mana. with it.
Yeah.
You can decide, just to put it into play and, delay opponent's play as well. So that,
And sometimes it will just throw your opponent off as well. Sometimes they'll just play incorrectly because they know you can do that. So they'll try and like just not play creatures, but if they're not playing creatures, they're not advancing their game state.
yes, exactly.
I will just say, you mentioned playing cards to kind of protect your combo. How useful is subtlety for protecting a combo when all it stops is creatures and planeswalker spells?
So I would say protecting the combo and disrupting opponent's game plan. So, protecting the combo also means not dying.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I think half of the time that means not dying is protecting your combo. So that's how that's really how it helps, So it's just the tempo play, it's the tempo play it provides. And because you don't care too much about how many cards you have, about card advantage, because the one thing you can do, the reanimation, just kind of gives you so much advantage, you don't need anything else. So
Yeah.
even there, I played subtlety in Kefka, and sometimes you would be like, yeah, I can subtlety, but then I lose the card, and I will need that card maybe in 2 turns, because I might need to remove a counterspell from my hand, or something. So in that deck, that was really downside to play subtlety sometimes, right? Here, you most of the time you just want to do it, right? Yeah,
I see that.
Okay. So we're coming close to all the creatures. I think we'll go much quicker through sorceries and instants. I think creatures are the most interesting about this deck. So the next one is really interesting, is the Summon Behemoth. And that was, again, one of the things I thought about on playing, flying, to the tournament. And, so first of all, it's a 9/9, saga. So it's a 9/9 flyer, which is important. It's not legendary, which is also very important. And I did win, I think, 2 games where I had to persist and I really needed strong non-legendary creature. The second thing that's really good about Summon Behemoth that came in the Flage matchup is that because the Saga ability is not an ETB ability, technically, albeit it does have all the kind of other things associated with ETB. It's a state-based activity. And it actually wasn't stopped by the 1/2 Ogre that stops the ETBs, right?
This is a Hushbringer.
Yes, Hushbringer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, even if I had the Archon of Cruelty, it would be 6/6, flyer, which could be kind of okay, but I really needed to kill his Flage, which he played. So I played this, actually killed his Flage. So that was superly important. And kind of having that destroy target permanent on the second turn as well.
Yeah.
Kind of, that's pretty nice. So I've had a really good experience with Summon Behemoth. I would definitely play it again. And I never got to the Force kind of saga mode.
Because you'd already won by then, yeah.
You already won by then, yeah, exactly. I did have...
it is also an enchantment as well. So that counts towards your delirium.
Exactly, it's an enchantment. And I did have one, actually that Flage that one draw that I've had, which was somewhat unfortunate because otherwise I would be making top 8 in that second day tournament. But I played Dance of the Dead on the Behemoth. Yes. It was 10/10, right? And I also had, in my last turn, I had a Fear of Missing Out, which was enabled by Delirium. So I could attack my opponent for 10 and 10 with my Behemoth. So it was for 20 plus 2 from the Fear of Missing Out because I killed all of his stuff, but he was on 23 because he played Flage before and he never played a single fetch land. So I've got him from
close.
23 to 1.
Yeah.
And that was it. Yeah, I will talk about it a little bit when we talk about the Dance of the Dead, because that's the weaker reanimation spell. But I also had a Pyrogoyf in game. So had I have a Persist or Animate Dead or anything else, I could have just, hit my opponent for 18 and then hit him for 6 with Pyrogoyf. So I would have won, very easily. But, there you go. But still, Summon Behemoth was absolutely amazing. Troll of Khazad-dûm, again, even more powerful in this deck than in any other because you play Persist. You can animate that, etc. And you can be like, you have 4 turns, just do your best, right? And it searches for land as well. So Troll, very, very good. Would always play it. And
I mean, Troll is good enough in a black deck that isn't a reanimator focus, just because of the fact that it fixes your mana. So the fact that you can also reanimate it just gives it even more versatility in this deck.
Exactly. And it's persistible as well. So again,
Yeah.
that's super probably irrelevant. And actually getting -1 power from both persist and animated doesn't really matter most of the time, because you're kind of changing 18, like 24 damage clock to 20 damage clock. So again, that doesn't matter that much.
It's
And then,
really hard to block profitably. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And then the best reanimation target, most of the time, Valgavos, the Terror Eater, which is just absolutely bonkers card. Most of the opponents played badly against it. Most of the opponents just had to stop and read. So what does it really do? And one opponent was like, okay, so I'm going to target it with the, Parallax Wave. So I'll sacrifice my creature. I said, no, you need to sacrifice 3. I was like, what, 3? I thought 1. But the most funny interaction I've had was actually against that blue-black, control deck, where I've managed to get Valgavos into play, and obviously they have no way how to remove it because they don't have permanence, right? So, and in the desperation, opponent went something like Sauron's Ransom on you. So I say, okay, let's do the Sauron's Ransom. Let's do the 2 piles. Okay, 1 pile goes to your grave, so that goes under the Valgavos. Then the Valgavos resolves. You get the 2 cards. The actual Sauron's Ransom goes under him. Then I play the Sauron's Ransom for 3 life. And I also get to play the 2 cards that you didn't get into your graveyard. So it was absolutely crazy. But another good situation that came up was against the Lands deck. And I played against Lands deck, and the Lands deck had probably the best start you can have against me by going turn 1 Burgeoning, which obviously is just crazy against my deck with 10 fetch lands.
Yeah, of course.
So you in turn 1 Burgeoning, he had completely locked everything up. So he had all the lands, he played his commander, and I just went turn 3, reanimate Valgavos. And we were like, oh, my life formed alone, not so good anymore. My it just killed him, right? He just couldn't recur his lands. He just couldn't do anything, and he was just sitting there and not doing anything. And that was one of the games where he said, I felt like I cannot lose it. Like there was no way for me to lose it. And yes, there was Valgavos, yes. But generally, it's lifelink. And again, lifelink, flying, ward. Like I've played against Yoshimaru, and he really did remove his Yoshimaru, his 2 other creatures, just to kind of put this under the Parallax Wave. But that was his whole board, right? So I didn't win easily, from that point as well. So Valgavos is usually like Valgavos and the Archon, right? So they start, at the beginning of the alphabet and end of the alphabet when it comes to the creature in my decks. But those 2 are usually the 2 best go-to reanimation targets.
Amazing. So moving on to the sorcery.
Right. So I'll try to go a bit quicker through the sorceries and instants, because I guess people would not want to watch 3-hour deck review. So sorceries. So I felt after day 1 that I needed more board control, and I've added Damnation into the deck, right? And also you'll see that I play Personal Tutor that kind of searches for sorcery. So I play actually lots of tutors. I put Damnation just because of all the aggro decks and also the jump decks where I felt like I really want to kill their board. In hindsight, it didn't play as well as I thought it would. And actually now I would replace it with Pyrokinesis. So I would actually play Pyrokinesis instead of this, which I didn't play, and I probably should have played. I didn't play Pyrokinesis because I didn't play that many red cards. So that was kind of my consideration why not to play it. And, my red creatures are usually pretty good, like the Deadpool and the, and other stuff. Demonic Tutor, no explanation needed. Duress, Thoughtseize, and Inquisition of Kozilek, they all fall into the same category. And actually, I personally value seeing opponent's hand more than the actual discard effect most of the time, right? Or value it as much as the discard effect. And that is because you know how to play. Can I go for reanimation, or do I play a different game? It really enables you to set a game plan. And again, when I have one of these spells, I usually am very happy. The same would be for Gitaxian Probe, actually. That's I have 4 spells that can look into opponent's hand and give me the best. Tell me what the best game plan could be for that for that game. Albeit, I did mention there were examples where I went Duress against the Squee deck. I discarded some card, and you just like, Oh, the Skull Clamp, and then all of my game plan I've divided went through the window. But that happens as well. But at least it does give you information, and that's probably important. And that's why people are saying, should I cut the rest? Is it good enough? And I think yes, it is, if you know how to use the information, right? Exhume, reanimation spell. Again, the benefit of Exhume as well as Persist in this deck is that I play Personal Tutor that can search for sorcery. So it can actually, this way, the Personal Tutor gives me a reanimation spell for both non-legendary as well as legendary. So again, superbly relevant. I would not cut Exhume ever, even though some people might be thinking you're reanimating opponent's creatures, but most of the time you either don't care or they actually don't have a creature. The faceless looting,
before you move on from Exhume, sorry, I think one other thing is that you mentioned you had games where your opponent had targeted graveyard hate, and Exhume's really good there because if you've got two creatures in the graveyard and they have 1 mana, so they can exile one thing, when you cast Exhume, you don't have to target, so they can get rid of your best creature, but you still get to return something.
That's a very good point, actually. And that was the situation that happened when my giant opponent, he kept 1 mana with his Keynight Curator, and I just went I think I went faceless looting, and I went to discard Bahamut and another good creature, right? So yeah, exactly. You cast Exhume, they removed Bahamut, but I still got, I think, Barogloif or something like this. So it still was worth it. So yeah, that's actually a very relevant point. Yeah. We did add faceless looting in there because, first of all, it feels like, when we were designing the deck, we were thinking about, you do want to execute your reanimation plan, even if opponent can consistently deal with your commander, right? So that was the reason why I kept the fear of missing out, why I have faceless looting, and why I've actually added frantic search later to the deck list that we'll talk about in a second. Also, it's actually relatively nice to discard it to commander, right? Even if you do get to attack with your commander, so you get the token, you get pseudo card advantage as well. So faceless looting is very good, and you can search for it with Personal Tutor if you need to search for a loot effect.
Also, looting 1 mana, so it can kind of speed up your game plan. Your commander comes down on 2, attacks on 3, whereas you could faceless looting on 1 and reanimate on 2. A lot of your animation spells cost 2 mana. So
that's true, albeit I've never got to do it. Oh. but it's
not
possible.
yet.
Yeah. Next one, Gamble.
This is the most questionable card. I trust you. You've said it's played really well, but I felt it was so. I was so torn when you said you wanted to include it, but you explained to me why it's good again.
It's a tutor that searches for 2 cards. It searches for the creature that you want to reanimate and searches for the loot effect to get that creature in a graveyard.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. It doesn't do quite like that. That's the best case scenario. But I did have situation where I gambled for Valdavos, which is I most gamble for targets, and opponents discarded it. I also did have a situation where I had 6 cards and I gambled for Fatal Push, and opponent discarded the Fatal Push. So I had that happen to me once. But any CEDH player will tell you that Gamble is one of the best tutors in the game. And that it's 1 mana, which is superbly relevant. It puts the card right into your hand, and you have 20-25% chance that you lose the card. And in half the situation, when you search for the creature, actually losing that card is a benefit. So Gamble is, some people look into it and they're like, this is not good. It is excellent card, and I think more people should be playing Gamble if they can in these type of decks. Yeah. Gitaxian Probe, I mentioned. Inquisition. Persist, again, kind of very clear. I spoke about Persist quite some time, and actually just having this card and this being such a great reanimation spell kind of not forced me, but influenced my selection of creatures, for the deck. Personal Tutor, I spoke about a lot.
I do think it's interesting saying as well, like Persist is almost like there's another version of this deck where you could swap Persist for Glorio's Vengeance. But they kind of work in opposite directions.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. I could be running Gorios. So the Persist, I agree, and I was saying that I could also be running Gorios in this type of deck, but then you might want to go into a bit more like a sneak attack type of, like Eldrazi deck, rather than this deck. So that's the reason why I didn't play Gorios, and I went more into the kind of recurring nightmare shell that I'm running now. Yeah. Personal tutor, which was next one. I actually had one opponent calling judge whether it wasn't banned. It was like, this is banned. I said, no, this is not banned. I was like, this is definitely banned. It's too strong. I was like, I say, it's a mystical tutor that's banned, not the personal one. It searches for sorcery. And here in this deck, it's absolutely amazing because it either searches for, in this version, Damnation or Toxic Deluge. So it can search for, board wipe. It can search for loot effect. It can search for reanimation target. It can search for, a card advantage. So it can search for stock up. So it virtually searches for everything you need to. And the second benefit is that because, it's a target that puts the card on top of your library. If you play turn 3 for, let's say, something like Persist, you can still attack with your commander, draw the Persist, discard the creature from your hand, and play the Persist.
Nice.
So that's why the 1 mana actually is superbly relevant. I would never play this for 2 mana, but for 1 mana, it's an excellent card. Stock up, again, if you need to play a different game plan, right? So this is my, backup game plan. If I need to play a control game, stock up enables you to do that. It's an amazing card. I can't see me not running stock up in any blue-based kind of control, type of mid-range, reanimation type of decks. Yeah, it's just amazing card. And Thoughtseize I've covered, and Toxic Deluge, again, no nonsense. Like you will play Toxic Deluge in any type of non-aggro black deck. Yeah, especially in the reanimation, it's even better because most of your reanimation guys survive the Deluge, so it's even better.
You can play it before reanimation or after reanimation without worrying about it.
Exactly.
And also your commander grows throughout the game, so you can even cast it with a Norman surviving as well.
Yeah, as I said, we had a situation where I could have flipped Norman, so it would have 3 counters plus, then it's 6/6, and then it survives the Toxic Deluge. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about, my philosophy when it comes to the choice of what spells do I want to run in my Duel Commander decks. So generally speaking, Duel Commander is very quick format, right? And it's a quick format. It runs consistent combo decks. It runs fast reanimation strategies. It runs very powerful mid-range decks. And, some of the aggro decks are super consistent and fast because you can run, usually your best creature as a commander, right? So everything is fast and more consistent than what you would expect out of 100 format. Kind of 100 card format. So when it comes to these spells, my line of thought is that I usually, when it comes to 1 mana spells, right, I run as many 1 mana spells as I can, as long as those 1 mana spells provide, very like removal, counter effect, with very little kind of downside, right? So that they work most of the time on most of the targets, right? Then 1 mana spells make sense. When it comes to 2 mana spells, they need to provide hard effect, so hard counter spell effect, hard removal most of the time, or some other additional benefit on top of it, right? And if the spell doesn't do that, I will probably not run it. So I don't really like any 2 mana removal spell. Like the black removal for 2 mana, I think it's too weak for the format, right? I don't have 2 mana to spare on that, So I was talking a little bit about the counter spell being a good example that kind of is a spell that I play in the deck, but doesn't quite fit in this philosophy because it's a 2 mana spell. It's a hard counter spell, but it doesn't provide any other benefit. So it's only hard counter spell. So I didn't get myself to cut it yet, but it's also kind of on the edge, especially in this type of deck. In a kind of control deck, mid-range deck, of course, you would always play counter spell, but in this type of deck, it just doesn't do enough. But then it's still, when it's good, it's good. So I still run it, but it may be a little bit counterintuitive by why would I question counterspell in a blue-based deck, right? But it kind of, there is a reason for it as well. Brainstorm, I spoke about, super card. Days is absolutely amazing. It's a 0 mana counterspell some of the time, and when it works, it just kind of ends you the game, breaks the game. Dismember, it's 1 mana. Yes, you pay for life, but it's 1 colorless mana and it removes most of the creatures. So again, amazing. Fatal Push, 1 mana, remove most of the aggro creatures. Very, very good. Always play it. Flusterstorm is an interesting one. And some people ask me, why do I run Flusterstorm? Again, it's a 1 mana spell that helps me protect my combo or my reanimation. And I've had a situation against the lands deck where I mentioned he played turn 1 Burgeoning. I played turn 1 Blue Land. So he put a land into play, from his hand. Then in his turn, he put his third land, and he was kind of low on cards, and he played something like Mulch, or, some kind of sorcery that finds you 4 lands. And that would absolutely kill me because it was fueling his hand, but I had a Flusterstorm. And that was like one of the very few counters, this and the Spell Pierce would have been the only 2 spells that kind of counter that spell, So I do really like Flusterstorm, and most of the time, every time I draw it, it's worked excellently for me. It's 1 mana counter spell, for stuff that matters. Not for everything, but for stuff that matters. Yeah. Force of Negation, again, I don't want to talk about too much because it's a great card. Always run it. It's a free spell. In this deck, it's more free than in others. I've already kind of been through it when we've been talking about the creatures, right? Force Spike, again, 1 mana counter spell that works most of the time, so always run it. That's excellent. Frantic Surge, kind of costs 3 mana, but gives you 3 back, so it's kind of 0 mana loot effect, which we thought about, and this was kind of one of the latest card that's a redundancy card, really, when the commander doesn't work, right? And even if the commander works, you can always discard it. Galvanic Discharge, Lightning Bolt, duo of red removal. You'll play in most of the kind of decks that can produce red mana. Lose Focus, again, I'm not sure about this. I could see myself cutting it. It's a good counter spell. It's a good late game counter spell, good early game counter spell, but it's just does it protects. It's okay, but I could see myself cutting it. Same for Mana Leak. Mana Leak is the same thing. So it's a 2 mana counter spell that counters most of the time. So it doesn't quite fit the philosophy that I have. So again, I'm not sure if I'll be running it, again, but I would want to run a good, let's say you need to run like 5 to 6 counters, if not 7, to not be too weak to combo decks. So you do need to run some counter magic. So this is my reason why I still include the counter spells, even though they're not like the best, when it comes to, my evaluation of card. Mental Misstep. What to say about this? 0 mana counter spell that counters cards that matter. Yeah, like the best counter spell, right? It's like so many stories with Misstep that just makes opponents angry, or you angry if you're on the receiving end of. Okay, the next one is Prismari Command. So this is an interesting one because it's 3 mana spell. So this is all way on my kind of edge of what I would play in this deck, right? But here, when we were kind of doing brainstorming, it kind of does everything. It can deal 2 damage, so it can remove some smaller threats. It gives you instant loot effect. So again, draw to discard 2 in this deck is that's the main effect why I play the command, really. Creating treasure token could be nice ancillary effect, like, you might need an extra mana to execute your combo next turn. You might be on 3, you don't have extra land, you will create a treasure token. And destroying target artifact, superbly relevant to dealing with hate. So as we said, most of the graveyard hate is, or a lot of the graveyard hate is artifact based, so destroying artifacts, superbly relevant. And having more answers is better. So that's the best factor fiction in this deck, because the second pile, you don't choose Ghost into the graveyard. It's so much better in this deck than it was in Kefka, that it's like an opponent consistently got the piles bad. My opponent gave me a pile with face-up land and face-up Gristlebrand. And I was thinking, I don't need land, and I want Gristlebrand in my grave. So you're already offering me 1 card for me not choosing that pile. So I'll choose the pile that is kind of, face down. And that face down pile actually had an amazing card in it, right? So that was completely wrong. And, really Soren's Ransom is like draw 3. At instant speed, and sometimes, kind of putting card in your graveyard could be even considered drawing an extra card. So superb, Soren's Ransom, excellent.
I think your deck makes it really hard to do the piles properly for your opponent, though.
Yes.
Because of what you've just said.
Yeah, impossible. Whenever I had it and whenever I had time, I was very happy with the card. Again, Sink into Stupor, amazing card. You'll play it in any blue base deck. It can be land, and actually being blue land is much better than, let's say, black land for Boggart Troller. So, and also effect, it can be a counter spell, right? It is a delay, and it's a counter spell. It's really good. You'll play it everywhere. Snuff Out, destroy non-black creature for no mana and for life. Amazing, so it's been always amazing, except for when I played against, mono black opponents. But then you can still discard it, so, you have that.
You can just throw it away and matchups where it's irrelevant.
Exactly. Spell Pierce, Stern Scolding, Same thing. 1 mana counter spells that counter most of the things in the format. Superbly good, superbly relevant, never cutting any. Stifle. I do not run Stifle in our league games because the most of the time I use Stifle to stifle the fetch land. But, in competitive environment, you'll always run Stifle because you can just get free wins out of it. And sometimes stopping some triggered activity could be really relevant. Tainted Pact, instant speed, demonic tutor. Yes, please. Never cutting that card. Tail Scent.
Your mana base is made in a way that you don't have any repeat lands as well. That's the thing you have to watch out for. Tainted Pact. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't play any. I only play. I think I play just an island, and I didn't even play Swamp. I think in the end, did I play Swamp?
Oh wow.
No, I did play Swamp. Yeah,
okay.
I played Island and Swamp. Okay, so I played 2. Yeah. So Tail's End, amazing card, counters commanders. And is a stifle for triggered activities. It's a stifle and counters commanders and any legendary spells. Amazing card. And it's blue X, so that's perfect. Never cutting it. Unholy Heat. Again, I can get to Delirium quite often, and dealing 6 damage was relevant. I killed Paragoy, 5/6 Paragoy with it, or Barrogoy, quite often. So actually, that Delirium part of Unholy Heat can be activated and can be relevant. Wash away, what can I say? Never washing this away from my decks, countering commander for 1 mana or having a hard counter for 3. I'm never cutting that. Just very quickly to finish the review, Currency Converter, it's the only artifact. Obviously, that's superbly amazing with the commander, right? It's just crazy. Whenever I draw it, it was absolutely excellent. Gives you loot effect, redundancy. It's great. I did cut the, the commander's, what's the name of the, oh my God. What's the name of the
Arcane
2 mana artifact using?
Arcane Signet.
Yeah, Arcane.
Yeah,
you'll be thinking, why don't I have Arcane Signet when I said I care about Delirium? But it was too slow. It's not necessary, and I didn't feel like it didn't do anything.
And you play your commander on 2 as well, so it's kind of a clash there.
That's an excellent point as well. So it's a clash. So any 2 mana permanents, I really think hard where I want to play it. Because another thing that I cut was the Ledger Shredder, which again usually is very good card for reanimation decks, but I cut it because it was kind of doing same thing as Commander, and it wasn't giving me loot on demand, so as ETB. So I said, it's a good card, but I've cut it. Yeah. And then enchantments, those are all the reanimation. So Animate Dead, Dance of the Dead. Dance of the Dead is kind of on a weaker side because you need to pay 2 mana to untap it. But if you get like Valgavos, if you get like, Ardent, you don't really care. You don't really need to untap them that much. And sometimes +1/+1 on the 4/4 like Ardent, or 4, can be irrelevant. It takes it out of Flame Slash territory. Fable does everything. So it's a 3 mana. So it's kind of there, but it does everything for it, right? Gives you creature, gives you treasure, gives you loot. I did get to copy some interesting, because I do play lots of non-legendary creatures.
Yes.
You can copy Archon. I did get my opponent to scoop when I could have copied Archon. I was just like, yes, please, before you scoop, I still, as a response to you scooping, I copy the Archon that I just played, etc. Necromancy, again, amazing. You can play it at instant speed, can be irrelevant if you just need an ETB, right? And very quickly. And Recurring Nightmare was the latest edition, but again, I've already talked about it quite a lot. I do have lots of creatures. So anyway, I play only 34 lands. I think this is a good amount. I would not cut any. I would not add any. It played excellently. I never felt like I was, mana screwed too often or mana flooded too often. And this kind of gives you an overview to the deck. I think it's taken a little bit more time, but I hope that some viewers will appreciate a little bit more in-depth discussion about each card. And, some of these discussions are not relevant just only for this deck, but are relevant, I think, for the format overall. So thank you for having me. And it's been kind of a blast going through this.
No, thank you for joining me. If I could just ask you one quick question, that's about a couple of exclusions from the deck. How do you feel about Flash and Show and Tell in particular? Because I thought they kind of a similar kind of territory to what your deck's trying to do, but you haven't put them in your list. Is there a reason why that is?
Yeah, so I don't play Flash because many great Flash targets are kind of not in my color combination, right? So I can't play Atraxa. I can't play the, what's the name, green-white, that searches for 7 lands or 7 lands or creatures and makes you 7/1/1s. What's the name?
Yeah, I never can't. Yeah. I'll put it on the screen.
Yeah, put it on screen. I can't play, Woodfall Primus. Those are all the great cards with Flash. If you look into my creatures, only thing that's kind of good with Flash is Archon and Chaos Defiler maybe, but I don't need to remove 2 permanents. I really want to have creatures. So Flash was for me no-go, albeit it's a very strong card, and I will play it in any type of green-based reanimation decks. I will play it without a question. And then, of course, kind of show and tell takes you into the sneak attack territory. So it's a different deck. So you play, you'll play Eldrazi's, you'll play different creatures. I think it's a good card, but for a different deck.
Yeah. Well, Vlad, thank you so much for joining me today. This took a bit longer than we were expecting, but it's been an absolute blast going through your deck with you. I think it's a really cool deck. I think you did a cool job putting it together. I look forward to playing it again against FNM.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you as well. And see you next time.
Okay, so have a good day, guys.